The slave market on HFY Prime writhed with movement, the air thick with incense, sweat, and the quiet whimpering of the newly captured. Tall obsidian arches loomed over gilded cages and whispering merchants, their tongues wet with promises and poison. Among the noise, Soraya moved like a flame, bright, elegant, and dangerous. Her orange fur gleamed under the twin suns, and the silver inlays on her tailored sash shifted with every precise step. Eyes followed her. They always did. Whispers danced between lesser nobles as they lowered their ears in deference, and guards stepped aside as if the very air warned them of her approach. Soraya's braided crimson hair, thick and interwoven with polished bone charms, swayed like a banner behind her. The tribal tail rings at her hips jingled softly, marking her as one of the Embercrest, a high blood of the Vulpanii and a direct emissary to the Crimson Throne. A softer step joined her own. "The human pens are this way, my lady," murmured Rel-Lin, her advisor. The striped older male gestured discreetly ahead with his staff. Soraya flicked her tail. "Still questioning my decision to select from such primitive stock?" Rel-Lin gave a subtle bow. "Only out of duty. Their potential seems limited. Crude. Undisciplined." "Exactly," Soraya purred. "That's what makes them interesting." They entered the shaded pen, a glass-domed atrium where a dozen humans sat under guard, some sobbing, others shouting hollow threats through energy fields. All but one. He stood alone, a tall male with sun-browned skin and lean, hardened muscle. Short dark hair framed sharp cheekbones, and even now, with a faint bruise on his jaw, his posture remained impossibly relaxed. His expression wasn't desperate. It was calculating. Soraya stopped. "That one," she said simply, eyes narrowed. The human's gaze met hers. Direct. Unflinching. The corner of his mouth twitched upward. Half a smile, not quite mockery, but not submission either. Rellin's fur bristled. "He's been problematic. Took down 2 enforcers before containment. Injured a 3rd. Interesting." Soraya stepped closer to the transparent field. The guards exchanged uneasy looks. One reached for the controls. "My lady, he's not trained. He hasn't been broken." Soraya raised a hand. "Lower the field." The dome hissed as the barrier dissolved. The air seemed to still. The human didn't move. Soraya strode into the cell with the slow grace of a predator testing her prey. She stood before him, lifting a hand to his chin, claws slightly unsheathed. His skin was warm beneath her pads, and she felt the thrum of a strong pulse, not from fear, but power. "What is your name, human?" "Callan," he said. "Callan Reese. You're not afraid?" "No." Soraya's lips curled. "Most of your kind cower. Scream. Fight badly." "I fight very well," he said, matter of fact. "But I know when I've lost. And when I haven't." Her whiskers twitched. "You're clever. And you're curious." She released his chin, stepping back slowly. "You'll do." Callan didn't bow. He didn't resist when the collar was placed around his neck. He simply walked beside her as if he belonged there. And in a way, Soraya thought maybe he did. The wind at dusk brushed cool across the upper cliffs of Embercrest Hold, but Soraya barely noticed it as she strode through the arched gates of her estate. Behind her, Callan followed with the same unnerving composure he'd shown since leaving the market. No hesitation. No slouched shoulders. No glances at the exits. Just controlled footfalls and quiet observance. The palace guards stiffened as the two entered the inner courtyard, amber lights spilling across mosaics of obsidian and molten gold. Towering spires reached for the sky, their mirrored windows reflecting the twin moons as they began their ascent. "This will be your chamber," Soraya said without turning, leading him through a tall doorway carved from volcanic stone and lined in obsidian script. The room within was large, more than any pet might be expected to need, with a sunken bathing pool, silken floor cushions, and sliding crystal panels that opened to a private balcony. "You'll stay here. And close." Callan glanced around without awe. "Generous." I'm rarely accused of that, she replied. But then, you aren't a usual pet. He met her gaze again, that same quiet steadiness in his blue eyes. Is that what I am to you? Soraya stepped closer. She was taller than him by half a head, but his presence made the distance feel narrower. That remains to be seen. From the hallway, Rellin's voice intruded. My lady? Forgive the interruption. Soraya exhaled and turned. Yes? High Lady Mazira sends word. She's eager to meet your new acquisition at the coming Convergence banquet. Of course she is. Soraya's tone was sour. Prepare appropriate attire for both of us. Something that will impress. Rellin gave Callan a wary look. Will he behave? Callan smiled. I usually do. As Rellin retreated, Soraya looked him over once more. You'll attend me. At court, you'll kneel when expected. Remain silent unless addressed. And make no sudden movements around the highborn. You brought me into a nest of predators, Callan said softly. And you're warning me not to act like one. That flicker again, not fear, not arrogance. Strategy. She found herself amused. You catch on fast. He tilted his head. And what does my master want from me tonight? Soraya didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached up and gently brushed her claws through the dark stubble at his jaw. His scent, clean, masculine, threaded with something wild, coiled into her senses like smoke. I want to see how well you play pretend, she said at last. Because something tells me, Callan Reese, you're not nearly as tame as you seem. Callan's answering smile was cool and enigmatic. No, my lady. I'm not. The Convergence banquet was held beneath the central dome of the High Assembly, a cathedral of glass and flame metal where light bent strangely around the room's curvature, turning shadows into specters and torchlight into flickering illusions. It was the perfect stage for the games of the noble class, a hall of masks, of venom beneath velvet, and of truths twisted beneath titles. Soraya arrived at the apex of the procession, her orange fur sleek beneath ceremonial robes of blackened silk and ember thread. Her braid was coiled into a crown, studded with obsidian shards, a war mark among the Vulpanii, though most in attendance had forgotten what it meant. Callan walked precisely one pace behind her, clad in a fitted tunic of dark bronze trimmed with crimson. No collar by her instruction, but his presence marked him clearly as hers by the way his movements mirrored hers in rhythm and restraint. They entered beneath a cascade of starlight and harp song. Whispers followed. A human? Bold even for her. They say he took down 3 enforcers before capture. Or she just enjoys the exotic. Soraya ignored them. She always did. But she watched. Lady Mazira found them first, gliding across the polished floor with her usual theatrical flair. A tall, blue-pelted vixen adorned in pearls and silver thorns, Mazira was all smile and malice. Her voice dripped like sweet poison. Soraya, darling. And your pet. What a fascinating addition to court. Her golden eyes flicked to Callan. Do tell, does he bite? Only when invited, Soraya replied, her tone as smooth as her tail was bristling. She stepped between Mazira and Callan, a calculated move. But I wouldn't recommend testing him. Callan gave the faintest bow. My lady is very protective. Mazira chuckled. Oh, I do love them obedient. For a time. Soraya's claws flexed beneath her sleeves, but she didn't lash out. Not here. Not yet. The room shifted as Lord Velrix entered, his long black robes trimmed in bone white. One of Cinder's most influential warlords, and a rumored supporter of the growing anti-human faction, though never openly. His eyes raked across the room until they found Callan. A predator recognizing another. Lady Soraya, Velrix said with a polite incline of his head. May I borrow your companion for a moment? You may not, she said without missing a beat. Valrix's smile didn't reach his eyes. Such possessiveness. It's unbecoming. And yet I still possess. The air grew tense. Then Callan spoke. If it pleases my lady, I'll fetch refreshments. Soraya's tail flicked once in approval. Go. As he disappeared into the crowd, Soraya narrowed her eyes at Valrix. He's not a toy warlord. No, Valrix said, smile vanishing. He's a message. He turned and left her with that. Soraya's pulse quickened, not with fear, but with anticipation. This court was a battlefield, and tonight, the game had shifted. They were watching Callan not just as her possession, but as a symbol. A threat. And some were already deciding he should be removed. Callan moved through the banquet crowd like smoke through torchlight, subtle, unnoticed unless one was looking, and many were. Nobles, soldiers, and spies disguised as poets all studied him with a blend of fascination and revulsion. A human walking freely among the apex class of the Vulpanii was an anomaly. A threat. He paused near one of the fountain alcoves, retrieving a chalice of glimmering violet nectar from a silver tray. The servant who offered it, a young fox-faced male, didn't meet his eyes, but his voice carried just enough volume to be heard. Third arch to your right. A friend awaits. Callan gave no outward reaction. Just a polite nod, a murmured thanks, and a slow turn. He moved past a group of young nobles laughing too loudly, past the sculpture of a flame serpent goddess with blindfolded eyes, and into the quiet shadows behind the third arch. A tall figure waited there, clad in formal garb but lacking any of the usual noble flair. Her fur was dusky gray with streaks of white along her jaw, her amber eyes sharp as broken glass. You're the human, she said. You're not a wine steward, Callan replied. A dry smile. Nadera Threx. Imperial intelligence. Of course you are. We've been watching Soraya since the first whispers of military dissent in her province. Then you arrived. Unexpected. Unvetted. And now you want to know what I am. We already know. What we don't understand is, why her? Callan took a slow sip of his drink, letting the silence stretch. She was the only one who looked at me and didn't see a cage, he said at last. She saw something dangerous and still brought me home. That's the kind of noble who changes empires. Or burns them. Nadira tilted her head. Romantic. And risky. You'll need allies soon. Valrix is maneuvering for open support. He'll make a move within days. Callan stepped closer, lowering his voice. Then help me make sure he regrets it. Nadira studied him a moment longer. You're playing a deep game, Reese. I'm just playing to win. She handed him a small data cube, palmed discreetly. Coordinates? One of our outposts. You'll find some of what you're looking for there. But don't contact us again unless you're alone. And don't trust Soraya completely. She already knows I'm more than I pretended. Then let's hope she likes what she finds. Callan re-entered the banquet like nothing had changed. His eyes scanned the crowd, locking briefly with Soraya's across the grand hall. Her gaze flicked down. She noticed the subtle bulge of the data cube now hidden beneath his sash. She said nothing, but the look she gave him was one of dangerous curiosity. And perhaps growing trust. Soraya stood at her balcony long after the banquet ended, the moons casting long shadows across the canyon below. The air still carried the scent of fire, wine, and incense from the palace, but she could only think of Callan, of that flicker she'd seen beneath his sash. It had looked like a data capsule. He hadn't hidden it well enough. Or he had, just enough for her to see. A knock at the door broke her thoughts. She didn't need to ask who it was. Enter, she called. Callan stepped inside, his tunic slightly rumpled, his scent marked with the aromas of the hall, perfumed air, scorched oil from the torches, and something darker, metallic. You sent Mazira home with her tail between her legs, he said with a small smirk. That was satisfying. You disappeared, Soraya said, voice calm, but tail flicking with unspoken tension. Met someone? Callan met her gaze with infuriating composure. Yes. She circled him, slow and measured. A contact from the Intelligence Directorate? He didn't answer immediately. Didn't have to. Soraya stopped in front of him, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from his chest. Her claws unsheathed slightly, curling just beneath his collarbone as she slid a single digit up along his neck. "You played the role of pet beautifully," she murmured, her voice a whisper against his jaw. "Now I wonder what you'll do if I decide you're a threat." Callan's breath was steady, but his body was tense. Ready. Coiled. "I'll warn you once," he said softly. "Don't mistake affection for weakness." Soraya's ears twitched, her lips curling just slightly. "Oh, I never do." Her claws withdrew, trailing down his chest before she stepped back. "You're not the only one with secrets, Reese," she said, eyes gleaming in the moonlight. "But tonight you're still mine. And I don't plan on giving you up, yet." He relaxed slightly, but his next words carried a new weight. "Velrix is going to make a move. It won't be subtle. And you need to decide which side you're really on." "I'm on the side that survives," she said, "and takes power from the ones who never deserved it." Callan nodded. "Then we may be on the same side after all." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the wind stir the glowing flowers beyond the balcony rail. Neither fully trusting the other. Both unable to walk away. Finally, Soraya turned toward the chamber. "Rest. You'll need it." Callan paused at the threshold. "For what?" She looked over her shoulder, her smile predatory. "Training begins at first light. You may not be a pet anymore, Callan Reese, but you are still mine to shape." Dawn came sharp and crimson, lighting the Embercrest cliffs like blood on steel. The training courtyard behind Soraya's estate shimmered in the morning chill, its polished obsidian tiles lined with ancient scorch marks, reminders of duels long past. Here, titles meant nothing. Skill ruled. Callan stood barefoot in the center, stripped to a sleeveless black tunic and training trousers, his body lean and scarred in all the right ways. Soraya watched him from the edge of the ring, arms crossed over her breastplate, the morning sun turning her orange fur into a living flame. "You trained before," she said, circling him. "Not the way humans are expected to. Not guardsman drills or arena brute work. Real combat. Who taught you?" He met her gaze without flinching. "A long list of people who aren't alive anymore." Soraya flicked her tail. "Let's see what they taught you." She moved fast, faster than anyone would expect from someone so regal. Her claws were sheathed, but her strikes were precise, deadly, testing. Callan reacted with equal fluidity, blocking her first swipe, twisting away from her second, countering with a low sweep aimed at her legs. She leapt over it, landing in a crouch, grinning. "You fight like a ghost. And you fight like someone who likes to win." He shot back, panting slightly. Their movements escalated, bodies twisting, dodging, striking in perfect rhythm. His punches didn't land with brute force. They were surgical, each aimed to destabilize, to weaken balance, not overwhelm. She compensated with overwhelming speed and strength, their styles clashing and melding like wind and wildfire. A sudden step inside her guard brought them chest to chest. Callan's forearm pressed lightly to her ribs. "Kill shot." Soraya's claws rested at his throat. Mutual. They froze there, sweat slicked and panting, the heat between them burning hotter than the sun above. She could smell his arousal. He made no attempt to hide it, and it stirred something primal in her gut. "This was training?" he murmured, his voice low and edged with something darker. Soraya leaned in, her breath hot against his ear. "I train what I intend to keep." She stepped back before the tension snapped, letting her tail brush deliberately along his side. Again. Callan exhaled a sharp breath, eyes flashing. "Yes, my lady." And they clashed once more, blades of flesh and instinct sharpening against each other, not just in combat, but in the slow, dangerous dance of two predators circling a boundary neither fully understood. The summons came at midday, an encrypted message routed through the Embercrest internal network, bypassing all standard relay logs. Soraya stood in her command chamber, eyes narrowing as she read the origin stamp. "Outpost Velan 9, she murmured. Callan leaned over her shoulder, still towel drying from their third sparring match. Military convoy route. Yes. But this isn't a resupply notice. It's a distress ping, buried in a maintenance diagnostic. She tapped the projection, expanding the transmission stream. The message wasn't official. It was a whisper in code, one used by Soraya's own intelligence aide, Ryan, stationed at the border outpost near the Duskwind Ravine. Either he's being silenced, Callan said, or he found something someone doesn't want us to see. Either way, Soraya replied, we're going to see it. Within the hour, they were mounted in a sleek scout cruiser, flying low through the ravine passes beneath the cover of late afternoon haze. The cliffs below stretched into violet shadows, and far off, thunderclouds bloomed over the salt plains. Soraya piloted in silence, eyes sharp, body alert. Callan, seated beside her, was already checking his field gear: dagger, pulse pistol, micro-mask, short-range jammer. She noticed how his hands moved without hesitation, how his awareness never wavered. "You've done infiltration work before," she said, almost absently. "I was good at slipping into places I didn't belong." His smirk was faint. "Still am. You fit into my household a little too easily," she muttered. Callan turned his head. "Would it comfort you to know I had no idea what I'd find here?" She shot him a sidelong look. "Not even a little." They reached Villain 9 as the second sun touched the horizon, painting the outpost's domes in fading gold. But something was wrong. No patrol drones. No sensor ping. No gate response. Soraya parked in hoverstasis and leapt out first, claws unsheathed. "Stay close," she ordered. "I always do." They moved as one, her a living flame in motion, him a shadow at her side. The gates were half open, scorched at the edges. Inside, crates were scattered, consoles shattered. Blood streaks stained the floor. "Search pattern B," Soraya growled. Callan nodded and peeled off down a corridor, steps silent on metal grating. In the command room, Soraya found the source of the signal, Ryan's portable transmitter, smashed beside his body. His throat was cut, but his claws were extended. He'd gone down fighting. Her ears flattened. Someone had silenced him, someone inside. A voice crackled behind her. "Soraya. Cargo bay. You need to see this." She sprinted down the corridor and skidded into the cargo hold. And froze. Crates lay open. Inside were weapons, human design. Earth-made. Smuggled. Freshly stamped. Callan stepped beside her, his voice low. "They're arming for something. Preparing a push." Soraya clenched her fists, fur bristling. "Valrix?" He nodded grimly. "He's building a private force. And framing humans for it." "How do you know?" Callan crouched beside one crate, flipping it over. Beneath the false stamp was another, faint and unmistakable. An old human military seal. "This shipment came from Earth, but not from any criminal cell." He looked up at her. "These were stolen from a secured depot. 2 years ago." Her tail lashed the air. "And now they're here, in my province." Callan stood. "We need to leave. This outpost is already flagged. If Valrex is watching, he'll know someone came looking." Soraya's voice was ice. "Then let him know." The trap sprang the moment they left the outpost. Warning sirens blared across the ravine canyon as their cruiser lifted off, and automated defense turrets that should have recognized Soraya's command signature, opened fire without hesitation. Pulse blasts struck the rock face, erupting in molten shards. One hit glanced off the cruiser's port side, sending the vehicle into a spin. "Hang on!" Soraya snarled, gripping the yoke as the craft screamed through a sharp dive. Callan was already strapped into the gunner's seat, firing flares to confuse the targeting systems. "They've overridden your clearance codes." "No, someone inside disabled them." She stabilized the cruiser just enough to twist through a narrow canyon fork, scraping so close to the cliff wall that sparks lit up the sky behind them. More turret fire followed, but Soraya dipped under the range and punched the afterburners. The canyon fell behind them in a blur of gold, and fire. They shot out over the salt plains, and Soraya finally exhaled. Callan wiped blood from his temple. He'd hit his head when they spun. Remind me never to question your piloting again. I should have seen this coming, she muttered, tail flicking violently. The court was too quiet. The High Family's too still. Of course they were waiting. They weren't waiting for you, Callan said. They were waiting for me. Soraya shot him a sharp look. Explain. Callan unlatched a side panel, pulled a hidden data crystal from within his vest. This is a trace map of all stolen Earth military assets intercepted across border worlds in the last 8 cycles. Each one links to shipments routed through this system. He passed her the crystal. Soraya clenched it, jaw tight. Why didn't you show me this sooner? Because until today, Callan said quietly, I didn't know if I could trust you. She was silent for a long moment. The cruiser thrummed beneath them, engines whining as the terrain blurred past in streaks of light and shadow. And now? She asked at last. Callan looked at her, not like a soldier at a commander, or a spy at his cover, but like a man seeing something he hadn't expected. Now I'm certain you're the only one I can trust. That struck something inside her. Something hot. Something dangerous. They reached Embercrest Hold under nightfall, docking beneath a veil of camouflage. Relin met them on the landing platform, bowing deeply. My lady. There was a. Spare me the formalities, Soraya snapped. Who accessed my command files while I was gone? Relin blinked. Only Lady Voria. She said it was urgent. Summon her. Now. He bowed again and vanished into the corridor. Callan stood beside her, his posture loose but eyes scanning every angle. She's the leak, he said quietly. I suspected as much, Soraya growled. But now I'm done waiting. She turned on her heel and marched toward the inner keep, fire rippling through her fur. The flames of war were no longer distant. They were inside her walls. The audience chamber inside Embercrest Hold was silent, oppressively so. Only the low crackle of the fire braziers echoed through the tall, arched room as Soraya stood before the dais, her arms folded across her chest, expression unreadable. Lady Voria entered with her usual slither of grace. An older Vulpine noble with gleaming orange and silver fur, her black gown stitched with ceremonial runes of house loyalty. She bowed low, her earrings chiming softly. You summoned me, my lady? I did, Soraya said coolly. I'd like to hear your explanation for why my personal command access was used without authorization, and why a known smuggler's trail just happens to lead through a port you oversee. Voria's smile was polished. Practiced. A simple misunderstanding, surely. With your absence from court today, and rumors of an urgent inspection at Velan 9, I believed it prudent to update the emergency protocols. The province's security must come first. Callan, standing at Soraya's right, gave a faint snort. Voria's gaze flicked toward him, disdain masked as civility. And your pet was no doubt helpful in identifying such a minor clerical error. Soraya stepped down from the dais, each movement deliberate. Her golden eyes burned. Ryan is dead. That wiped the smugness from Voria's face. Murdered at his post, Soraya continued. By someone who knew his schedule. Who knew our convoy tracking was being reviewed. My lady, I assure you. You accessed my files without permission. Disabled my return flight authorization. And now you stand here and lie to my face. Soraya was in front of her now, claws unsheathed, voice low and dangerous. Do you know what that means under noble code? Voria's ears lowered. You wouldn't dare invoke the right. Callan glanced between them. What's the right? Soraya didn't look at him. It's an ancient law. If a high noble's actions betray the province, the ruling house may demand truth by combat. She smiled, slow and sharp. And I never rescinded the old laws. Voria's eyes widened. You want a duel? With me? No. Soraya turned to Callan. He'll stand for me. Callan blinked. Wait, what? You're not my pet anymore, she said. You're my chosen sword. My bond representative. And if I lose? Then Voria inherits my command, Soraya said, her tone flat. And Velrix gets his new puppet. Callan sighed and rolled his neck. Well, no pressure then, Voria snarled. You can't, he's not of our kind. He is of my household, Soraya replied. And that's all that matters. The room fell quiet again. Then Voria hissed, backing away toward the arena doors. So be it. But when your human bleeds into the stone, I'll enjoy watching your rule crumble with him. She vanished into the shadows of the dueling hall. Callan exhaled. You could have asked before volunteering me for a trial by blades. Soraya stepped in close, her hand on his chest. You said you trusted me? I did. I do. Then don't lose. Her kiss was brief, urgent, charged with everything she wasn't saying. Then she stepped away and vanished into the stands, her tail lashing behind her like fire. Callan stood alone in the silent chamber. Right, he muttered. No problem. The dueling chamber beneath Embercrest Hold had been carved into the bedrock centuries ago, when honor was measured in scars, not words. Its walls rose in a circle of dark stone, polished to a mirror sheen, while the floor was inlaid with a spiraling sun sigil, black and copper, now dulled by time and blood. The nobles gathered in the viewing balconies above, silent but alert. The rite had not been invoked in generations. But tonight it would be. Soraya sat at the highest seat, wrapped in ceremonial crimson, her tail coiled tight around her legs. Her claws dug into the armrest as she watched the chamber's doors open. Callan stepped into the arena alone. His torso was bare save for leather straps across his shoulders. His pulse blade was sheathed at his lower back, and a curved dagger sat at his hip. His expression was calm, but Soraya could see the tension in his posture. He wasn't afraid. But he was preparing for something brutal. Across the ring, Voria's champion emerged. Zake. A towering Vulpanii blade dancer from the Iron Tribes, fur the color of tarnished steel and eyes like frozen flame. He wore no armor, only ritual war paint across his chest and the twin blades he carried like extensions of his arms. The duel master stepped forward and raised a clawed hand. By the right of stone and fire, he intoned, combat shall decide the truth. The challenger fights to defend honor. The accused selects their blade. First blood ends nothing. This is to submission, or death. Zake smirked, baring fangs. I'll leave him breathing, he called. Long enough to clean up the mess. Callan didn't respond. His fingers twitched at his side. The gong sounded. Zake lunged like a beast unleashed, his twin blades singing through the air. Callan moved a fraction of a second before impact, ducking, spinning, letting momentum guide him into a counter-thrust that Zake barely blocked. Sparks flew where metal met metal. The crowd inhaled. Zake pressed forward, his strikes relentless, flashes of honed fury meant to overwhelm, not kill outright. Callan danced back, weaving and rolling, each motion efficient. He wasn't stronger. But he was faster. Smarter. Soraya saw it, how he read his opponent like a code, footwork, blade rhythm, breathing cadence. He wasn't just fighting. He was analyzing. Then Zake overextended. Callan stepped inside his guard, blade flashing upward in a clean arc, and opened a line of red across the Vulpanii's ribs. The crowd gasped. Zake staggered back, stunned. But his rage burned brighter. He roared and charged again, this time with no restraint. His blade came high. And Callan ducked low, pivoted, and drove his dagger hilt into Zake's gut, then kicked his knees out from beneath him. In a blur of movement, he had the warrior pinned, his pulse blade at the champion's throat. Yield, Callan growled. Zake snarled through his fangs. Never. Callan's eyes didn't blink. Then you'll die. Soraya stood. Enough! The duel master raised his voice. Combat concluded. Judgment rendered. Lady Voria's claim is void. Callan stepped back as Zake sagged to the floor, breath ragged. The chamber exploded into shouts, some of awe, some of fury, some of fear. A human had just bested a Vulpanii blade dancer, in sacred rite. And in doing so, solidified Soraya's power. She descended into the arena, her boots echoing as she approached Callan. Blood smeared his chest. Sweat gleamed on his skin. But his gaze was steady. "I told you not to lose," she said. He smiled. "You should have told him the same." Soraya reached up, pulled his face down to hers, and kissed him, deep and claiming. The crowd fell silent. It was no longer a question of if he belonged. Now they all knew he did. The aftershocks of the duel rippled across Embercrest and beyond. In the palace courts of the Vulpanii high clans, messengers whispered the news with hushed urgency. A human had invoked the right, and won. Lords who had once dismissed Soraya as eccentric now looked upon her with wary respect. Others, like Velrix, saw something far more dangerous. In the great stone tower overlooking the canyon, Soraya paced her war room, flamelight flickering across the tactical holotable in front of her. Blueprints, supply routes, and troop deployments floated in midair. Callan leaned beside the console, his torso wrapped in fresh bandages. "This won't stay political," he said. "Velrix has the weapons. Now he has motive. He'll come for you. He'll come for all of us," Soraya replied. "The right gave me legitimacy. But it also painted a target on our backs." Callan folded his arms. "We need to move first." "You want to strike?" "No. I want to expose him." He turned to her. "Ryan died for a reason. Voria accessed those files. There has to be something she saw, something worth killing over." Soraya tapped a command, summoning an encrypted archive. Voria's household systems were purged the moment the right was invoked. But my spies intercepted a backup. The screen flared to life. Coordinates. Cargo manifests. Several were tagged with the sigil of House Velrix. Callan leaned in. "These cargo runs pass through moons outside royal jurisdiction." She nodded grimly. "Private strongholds. Hidden training facilities. And this one," he pointed, "is orbiting Terra 7. That's not a storage outpost, that's a shipyard." Soraya's breath caught. "He's building a fleet." Callan's expression darkened. "This isn't a coup. This is preparation for war." She turned to him fully, her orange fur catching the flickering flames. "If we go there, we'll be exposed. If we're wrong." "We're not," he said. "But if we don't move now, we'll be too late." Soraya stared at the projections for a long moment. Then she straightened. "Prepare the ghost fong. Quiet flight only. No house banners." Callan's brow lifted. "You're not sending scouts?" "I said prepare it, not pilot it. We're going ourselves." He smiled faintly. "Now that sounds like the woman who almost killed me in training." She stepped closer. "And this is the man who nearly died for me in the dueling circle." They stood in silence, inches apart, the fire crackling behind them. "This war is coming," she said. "But I'm not waiting for it to reach my gates." Callan's hand found hers, fingers curling with quiet strength. "Then let's bring it to his doorstep." The ghost fong lived up to its name, sleek, black-hulled, and nearly silent even at full thrust. It cut through the cold void like a whisper, cloaked in signal scramblers and phase dampeners that would have fooled even Imperial fleet sensors. It had no banners, no markings. Only two aboard. Soraya sat in the pilot's seat, her gaze sharp as stars drifted across the viewing screen. She wore a matte black infiltration suit that molded to her athletic frame, her twin knives sheathed along her hips, her orange fur dimmed by shadow dye. Only the fire in her gold eyes still glowed. Callan checked the final seals on their equipment pack. "Approach vector locked? We'll breach orbit over the shipyard's dark hemisphere. No patrols, no live traffic." She tapped the display. "He's hiding his forces behind a mining operation." Terra 7 doesn't have an atmosphere strong enough to support open assembly, Callan muttered. He's building in orbit. In secret. Then let's see what he's hiding. They descended through the planetary ring, ice and metal chunks tumbling past the hull. Below them, the structure emerged, a vast, skeletal cradle of scaffolding and carrier shells, suspended above the gray moon's surface like a suspended god. It was still growing. Still arming. Callan exhaled. That's not a fleet. That's an invasion force. Target? Soraya asked. Callan narrowed his eyes. The royal capital. If he times it right, he can strike the palace during the Unity Accords next week. Every noble, every diplomat in one place. Then we don't leave without proof. She guided the ghost Fong into a shadow dock just beneath the station's lower structure. Magnetic anchors clamped tight. They dropped through the bottom hatch and into a maintenance corridor slick with condensation and echoing with distant hums. Soraya moved like a flame-given form, silent and lethal. Callan matched her step for step, pulse pistol drawn, blade already loose in its sheath. The corridors were patrolled, but Valrix's confidence had bred carelessness. They slipped between shadows, through open gates and bypassed terminals. They reached the central command hub within the hour. Inside the core chamber, suspended above a holographic table, hovered the schematics of a new warship, sleek, low profile, equipped with human stealth tech and Vulpanite plasma lances. A hybrid. Untraceable. That's how he's doing it, Callan whispered. He's blending our tech, making it look like an Earth incursion. Framing your people for a war they didn't start. Soraya growled low in her throat. We have to stop this. She moved to the console, slicing into the control feed. It was protected, but not against her encryption codes. Seconds later, she had it: full troop manifests, logistics data, fleet rollout schedule. All tagged with Valrix's house seal. Callan backed toward the exit. We have it. Let's move before. The corridor lights flashed red. Alarms howled through the chamber. A cold voice rang over the speakers. Lady Soraya? Commander Reese. How predictable. Soraya's blood froze. Valrix. The voice continued. You found what I allowed you to find. I only needed you to take the final step, to reveal where your loyalties truly lie. Doors sealed behind them. Dozens of steps echoed through the corridors, security closing in. Callan raised his pistol. We're boxed in. Soraya's eyes burned with fury. Then we carve our way out. She transmitted the data burst to her estate's relay in a single command. Proof is away, she said, drawing her blades. Now let's make sure we live long enough to see it used. The moment the transmission burst left the station, the walls seemed to shift. Metal plates hissed open, turrets whirred into position, and the distant sound of boots striking steel echoed down the corridor like war drums. The trap had snapped shut. Exit vector? Callan asked, crouched by the blast door. Sealed, Soraya said. Her voice was calm, but her fur bristled with instinct. Main corridors are bottlenecked. Valrix designed this place like a hunting cage. Then we break the design. She smiled, a feral curl of the lip. That's the spirit. A heavy plasma door behind them groaned open, and the first squad entered, armored soldiers with visors gleaming and pulse rifles raised. They fired on sight. Callan moved first, rolling forward, twin bursts dropping two before they cleared the frame. Soraya blurred through the chaos, blades flashing in the red emergency lights, her motions graceful and lethal. A soldier tried to flank them. Callan tackled him into the wall, disarmed him in one breath, and used his own weapon to fell the next attacker. Soraya spun low, sweeping another's legs out, then brought her claws up in a rising arc that left crimson across the wall. The hallway ran with blood and flickering sparks. Callan exhaled hard. We can't go back through the hangar. Too many troops. Soraya activated a secondary map on her bracer. There's a waste ejection shaft 3 levels below us. It's unstable, but if we time it right, it'll launch us clear of the station. He arched a brow. You've done this before? No, she said. But I've survived worse. More gunfire erupted behind them. They sprinted through the underdecks, through steam vents, behind heavy coolant tanks, down spiraling ladders slick with condensation. The station groaned around them, as if it too knew betrayal had entered its bones. Finally, they reached the shaft. It pulsed with energy, a massive piston chamber that vented high-pressure waste into the void every 6 minutes. The floor beneath them trembled with each cycle. Tell me we're not jumping into that, Callan muttered. Better than waiting for Valrix to shoot us in the back. She set a countdown on her bracer. 3 seconds after the next purge starts, the gravity well will stutter. It's the only window. Callan tightened his grip on her arm. You missed the timing, we're space dust. I won't. They waited, breath steaming in the cold. The purge vented once, violently, the force so loud it rattled the chamber. Then, now. They leapt. For a breathless moment, there was only pressure and darkness and the scream of wind and metal. Then a snap, the shock of ejection, followed by weightlessness. The ghost fawn was waiting, hovering just beyond the vent radius, autodocked on Callan's signal. Its hull opened, and they tumbled inside, rolling across the floor in a tangle of limbs and gasps. Alarms still echoed across the shipyard behind them. But they had escaped. Callan groaned, lifting his head as Soraya lay sprawled atop him, breath ragged. Next time, he gasped. Let's not use the garbage chute. She laughed. Genuinely. Her body trembled with it. You're still alive, aren't you? He looked up at her, all humor fading. Barely. But I'd do it again. Their eyes locked, the adrenaline high sharpening into something else, something hotter, more dangerous than the fight itself. Then the comms flashed. An encrypted message. From Embercrest Hold. Soraya sat up, scanning the screen. Her tail stiffened. The Empress has seen the data. She's recalled all noble fleets to high orbit. House Valrix has been summoned to stand trial. Callan wiped a smear of blood from his cheek. He won't come quietly. No, Soraya said, eyes blazing. But neither will we. The capital skyline shimmered with tension as the ghost fang descended from high orbit. Soraya stood at the forward viewport, arms crossed over her chest, eyes locked on the towers of crystal and steel rising like spears against the dawn. Normally, the imperial city of Lyrian burned gold in the morning sun, but today, it looked cold. Watchful. As if the city itself sensed the knives hidden behind every smile. They're calling it a summit, she said quietly. But this is a tribunal. Callan stood beside her, armored now in a reinforced version of Vulpanii combat wear, midnight black with Embercrest sigils discreetly etched at the collar. A trial with open blades and closed doors. Soraya turned. We walk into that court, and every eye is on us. They'll try to discredit the data, question your presence, use my bond with you as proof of compromised judgment. He met her gaze, unwavering. Then let them. We've already bled for this truth. I'll bleed again if I have to. She stared at him for a long moment. Her hand rose, resting lightly against his chest. You're not a symbol to me, Callan. I know, he said. But I'll be one if that's what it takes to finish this. The cruiser docked on the upper platform of the Empress's spire, where banners of every noble house fluttered in the wind. Armed honor guards flanked the crystalline bridge into the high forum. At the far end stood Valrix, already cloaked in ceremonial armor, his fur polished, cybernetics gleaming. He was smiling. Lady Soraya, he called, his voice booming. And your pet. How gracious of you to attend. She strode forward, ignoring the gasps and stares from the gathered nobles. You won't be smiling when the charges are read. I suspect, Valrix said smoothly. I'll be the only one not pretending surprise. A chime rang out across the plaza. The Empress had arrived. The gathered nobles lowered their ears as a tall figure emerged from the inner chamber, cloaked in white and gold, her fur silvered with age and wisdom. Her voice rang clear. The throne calls this court to order. Accusations have been levied, Evidence submitted. Truth, as always, shall be revealed in the light of unity. Soraya stepped forward, her voice sharp as a blade. I stand as witness. My advisor murdered. My outpost sabotaged. My authority undermined. And I, Valix said, bowing mockingly, stand accused by a noble consorting with human operatives and elevating a captured spy to court status. A ripple went through the crowd. Callan stepped forward. My name is Callan Reese, former operative of Earth's Interstellar Defense Unit. I entered Vulpanii space under deep cover to track rogue elements trafficking Earth military hardware. He held up a crystalline drive. This contains troop deployments, flight manifests, and cross-species weapons data, all linking House Valrix to the conspiracy. Valrix chuckled. How convenient that the spy presents evidence just as he's elevated to consort. Enough, the Empress said. Her voice didn't rise, but the weight of it silenced the crowd. We will review the records, she continued, and examine the charges. Until then, the accused is to be detained under royal guard. Valrix's smile vanished. You presume authority over a warlord of the outer provinces? He growled. I am authority, the Empress said, stepping closer, eyes hard as ice. And I will not have my empire torn apart by warmongers in noble cloaks. The guard stepped forward, but Valrix raised one hand. And the sound of weapons powering up echoed across the plaza. Dozens of soldiers appeared along the outer ledges, pulse rifles aimed inward. Soraya's claws unsheathed. Coward! Valrix's voice twisted with venom. You were right about one thing. This isn't a trial. He turned to the crowd. It's an execution. The moment Valrix's soldiers opened fire, the plaza erupted into chaos. Energy blasts streaked through the air, shattering marble, searing through banners, and sending nobles diving for cover. Screams echoed off crystal walls as armored guards returned fire, but the traitors had the high ground, and surprise. Soraya didn't hesitate. She launched herself forward in a blur of orange and steel, her twin knives flashing as she deflected an incoming bolt aimed at the Empress. Callan was already moving beside her, pulling the Empress down behind a shattered column and returning fire with precise bursts that dropped two of Valrix's sharpshooters in seconds. Secure the Empress! Soraya barked to the loyal guards. Now! Valrix advanced, wading through the carnage with that smug grin still carved onto his face. Look at this mess, Soraya. All to protect your pet. Was he worth it? Soraya spun into a rising strike, forcing him back. He's worth more than your entire house. Their blades clashed, hers of forged bone and flame-hardened steel, his of powered alloy and humming plasma edge. Sparks lit the air as they traded blows, their fight carving a circle of cleared space amid the storm. Nearby, Callan shot the grapple cable off a sniper's perch, sending the assassin tumbling down in a heap. He pivoted smoothly, grabbing a fallen rifle and tossing it to Soraya. She caught it mid-spin, leveled it with one clawed hand, and shot a blast of searing plasma directly at Valrix's leg. It caught, he stumbled, growling in pain. Callan reached her side, panting. Reinforcements? Soraya glanced toward the spire's entry gates. Any second now. As if summoned, the inner blast doors split open, and a wave of elite Imperial guards surged into the plaza, black gold armor gleaming, rifles sweeping in unison. The tide turned in an instant. Valrix cursed, firing wildly, retreating behind his last loyalists. Cut them down! Soraya shouted. Don't let him escape! But Valrix activated a remote beacon, flaring lights signaled above, and a sleek transport ship screamed overhead, lowering fast cables through the smoke. He grabbed one, wounded but smiling. This isn't over. He spat, blood dripping from his muzzle. You've chosen a human over your kind. When this war ignites, he'll be your ruin. Soraya lunged, but the transport lifted with a roar of thrusters, vanishing into the clouds above. Silence fell. The plaza was scorched, strewn with wounded, but the Empress was safe. Valrix had failed, but he wasn't finished. Callan turned to Soraya. His brow was cut, his arms singed, but he still stood tall beside her. He'll strike from the shadows next. Assassins. Sabota. He can try, she said, and for a moment, her smile held no nobility at all, only the promise of vengeance. The Empress approached them, her cloak singed but her eyes bright with command. You saved me, she said simply. You both saved the Empire. Soraya bowed. We only delayed its collapse. Callan stepped forward. Valrix is building something worse than a coup. He's not just trying to take the throne. He's trying to start a war between our people. The Empress nodded. Then we must finish this before it begins. She turned to her guards. Prepare the War Council. Begin mobilization. House Valrix is no longer recognized as part of the noble line. As soldiers moved to obey, Soraya glanced at Callan. This was just the first strike, she whispered. He met her gaze. Then we hit back harder. The Emberfang strike cruiser hung silent above the cratered ruins of Alcarin, the dead moon whose surface bore scars older than either the Vulpanii or humanity. Deep beneath those scars lay Valrix's final bastion, a subterranean fortress wrapped in layers of jamming fields, anti-scan netting, and ancient defenses. It was here that the war would end. In the war chamber, Soraya stood at the center of the strike team. Her black infiltration armor had been modified, sleeker, sharper, the Embercrest sigil etched in red across her collar. Around her stood 6 of the deadliest warriors in the Empire, loyalists, defectors, and 2 human operatives pulled in from Callan's network. Callan leaned over the holomap beside her. He's moved his war fleet here. All communication out of this system has gone dark. It's a final move. Either he launches soon, or buries himself and takes half the Empire down with him. Soraya's tail flicked. Then we cut out the heart. The Empress had given them full authority, no command delay, no rules of engagement. Soraya and Callan weren't just emissaries anymore. They were executioners. You don't have to come, she said softly as the team filed out. You've done enough. Callan's eyes narrowed. We started this together. We finish it together. She stepped closer. What if I lose myself in it? Then I'll bring you back. He kissed her, slow, fierce, and unguarded, and for a moment the world fell away. Then the ship descended. The descent into Valrix's fortress was a slow crawl through death. The strike team emerged from the drop pod in total silence, gliding down into the ancient tunnels beneath Alcarin's surface. Dust choked the air, disturbed only by the hum of power coils and the rhythmic pulse of shield generators. Blackened statues lined the walls, forgotten gods with shattered eyes. This place was once a Vulpanii holy site, Soraya whispered, her voice tight in her throat. He built over the bones of our ancestors. Callan swept his rifle over the shadowed path ahead. Then we bury him with them. They pushed forward, room by room, hall by hall. Disabling guards, bypassing locked gates, and slipping past detection. The team was a ghost through steel and ash. But Valrix had prepared for war. By the time they reached the central spire, half their team was wounded. One was dead. He's baiting us in, Callan said. Pulling us deeper so he can trap us. I hope he does, Soraya growled. I want him to see me before he dies. They entered the control chamber, a vast cathedral of metal, with engines humming along the walls and plasma conduits glowing like veins. In the center stood Valrix, clad in full combat armor, his cybernetics pulsing with blood-red light. He turned slowly, like a king welcoming guests to his throne. I knew it would be you, he said, voice echoing across the chamber. The fox and her pet. Soraya stepped forward, blades already drawn. You're not walking out of here. I don't intend to. He lifted a remote trigger. This station is hardwired into a subspace cannon. When I die, it fires into the Empress's palace. Callan raised his weapon. Then you're dying disappointed. Valrix lunged, and chaos erupted. The floor split with hidden charges, scattering the team. Plasma turrets dropped from the ceiling. Valrix moved like a juggernaut, swinging a blade twice the size of Soraya's body. She danced beneath it, countered with blinding speed, her fury driving each strike. Callan rolled through gunfire, picking off turret nodes one by one, racing to reach the control tower where the weapon countdown had begun. Sparks lit the air. Screams and static blurred together. Soraya took a hit to the side, blood soaked her armor, but she didn't slow. She slammed her elbow into Valrix's throat, spun, and drove both blades into his chest. He staggered, gasping. "You think this ends with me?" he rasped. "The nobles will rise again. They'll burn your name. They'll—" She twisted the blades. "No," she said. "They'll remember I ended you." He fell. Callan's voice crackled over comms. Countdown stopped. "Cannon's dead." Soraya stood over Valrix's corpse, chest heaving, blood dripping from her claws. Her body shook, but not from pain. From release. "It's over," she whispered. Callan reached her side. "Not yet." They still had to get out alive. The corridors burned behind them as Soraya and Callan sprinted for the evac tunnel. The fortress collapsed around their heels, detonations triggered by Valrix's dead man failsafes. With each step, the walls cracked, ancient stone groaning as if the gods themselves wept at the desecration. The sky above had begun to split open, flashes of orbital fire from loyalist ships sealing the airspace around Alcarin. Their strike team was reduced to 3. Callan dragged one of the injured soldiers over his shoulder, breathing hard. "Keep moving! Docking shafts 2 levels up!" Soraya led the way, blood matting her fur, but her eyes burned brighter than they had all war. She felt it, that strange heat in her chest. Not battle lust, not vengeance, but something sharper. Freedom. They reached the escape lift as the last tunnel caved in behind them. The shaft rocketed upward, carrying them through molten light and into the arms of the Emberfang, where medics pulled the wounded away, and the bridge commander saluted with teary eyes. "You did it," he whispered. "No," Soraya said, turning to Callan as he limped beside her, still bleeding, still grinning. "We did." Weeks passed. The flames of civil war flickered and died as word of Valrix's death spread across the noble houses. Some tried to rally. Most fled. The Empress, seated once again beneath the twin moons, declared the beginning of a new accord, an alliance not of subjugation, but unity. Soraya stood before the High Court, her formal armor traded for ceremonial robes of crimson and obsidian. Her braid was newly bound. Her scars were not hidden. "Lady Soraya of Embercrest," the Empress intoned, "your actions spared this empire from ruin. Your name will be etched into the Star Hall. Your bond to Commander Reese, and the truth you uncovered together, have changed the course of history." Callan stood behind her, dressed not as a prisoner or spy, but as an equal. He stepped forward, eyes on Soraya. "We started as enemies," he said, "but what we built in blood became something more." The Empress smiled. "Then seal it." Soraya turned to him, her claws brushing his cheek. "No titles," she said. "No chains. Just this." Callan kissed her, not in hunger or battle fury, but with quiet, complete certainty.